guys, I'm Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk to you about the books I managed to read in December of 2018. As you can see, I have a different camera angle and I am super happy since I finally bought a tripod. I have great lighting, you can see my bookshelf behind me, and I absolutely love the quality of the camera. So this is the setup I am really happy with. The only thing that slightly annoys me is that it seems empty up there because there are just no books there, but if I like rotate the camera slightly, you can actually see there are some books there. It's just the camera angle that's doing this right now. So my bookshelf is kind of empty, and as you can see there is another bookshelf next to it. So that is my unhaul bookshelf. I don't really use it anymore, it's my old one. The white one you see behind me is the bookshelf I currently use, but I only really keep favorites, and I recently did an unhaul, so it's all kind of empty, but eventually will be filled up with amazing books I love. Having kind of rented just now, let's move on to the books I managed to read in December. December was kind of the month of a reading race, trying to get to my reading goal. I already reached my reading goal. I only set it up to 50 books, I believe, but I was so close to reading 80 books that 80 books was my new reading goal, and I was trying so hard to reach it, and in the end I actually managed to read 80 books. Although I did have to read a manga at the end of the year to reach that. I was reading Kingdom of Ash, and that's like an almost 1000-page book. It's like 8 pages shy of being 1000 pages. I was just not going to finish it before the end of the year. I finished it in January. I was too busy, so I read a manga with my boyfriend, and alas, I finished my reading goal. First book I finished in December was a library book, and that is Whisper to Me by Leigh. This book is about a schizophrenic girl. She hears one voice. This book is about her journey with schizophrenia and also dealing with one of her closest friends going missing and her trying to figure out what's going on, and this voice in her head telling her that it's her fault and she has to solve this. Meanwhile, our main character is also in love with this guy, and this whole book is basically an epistolary, writing an email to this guy saying she's sorry for what she did to him, and throughout this book you figure out the story slowly, and at the end of the book you know why she is apologizing to this guy and what she did to him. Our main character wasn't likable, let's say that for a first thing. She really wasn't. Although I do think this book dealt with mental health pretty damn well. I really liked how there was a therapist involved in this story, although I didn't feel like how the psychiatrist was depicted as just caring about prescribing medicine and then sending our main character on her merry way. That was how it was portrayed at first, but I like how the author eventually resolved that and showed how that was just main character's perspective on things and not really the perspective of the therapist. The therapist actually cared about the main character, but our main character just didn't want to see it. And then there's also a different sort of mental health therapy. It's kind of a group counseling thing, and they deal with things differently. They try to do it all without prescribing medicine, while not saying that our main character has to stop with medicine. It's just the medicine that is being prescribed for schizophrenia makes our main character kind of numb. You don't really feel as happy. If you feel happy, you're just numb. The group that is in this group counseling and the leader of this group counseling is trying to explain to our main character, like, there is a different way, but they're not discouraging her from taking her medicine, and I like how it all was so cautiously approached. I think the author dealt with it really well. A warning though, the author doesn't have schizophrenia himself, he just did research on it, so this is not an own voices book. I'm not even really sure if it's schizophrenia because the main character only really hears one voice. It's not really diagnosed as schizophrenia, I'm just calling it that because that's a common term and people know what it means, but our main character just hears one voice. It's a woman in like her 30s. There's also something that happened in our main character's past, and our main character is trying to figure out how that event relates to the voice she's hearing. This book is over 500 pages long, and I think it's a little bit too long for a contemporary novel. I didn't enjoy it that much. I rated it 3 stars. It was average, although I did like the mental health representation. I just didn't really care for the characters, and that is a big problem with a book about one specific character. It's basically a character study of our main character, and it's kind of sad if through all of that you don't really care about the main character. I just thought she was very unlikable, and the way she treated the love interest was horrible. Of course she was apologizing to him in this immensely long, over 500-page letter, because everything in this is a letter, and he only has like a couple days to read it, and she writes it in like 2 days or something, which is unbelievable, really, honestly. So it's kind of an unrealistic email as well. But the way she treated the love interest was just horrible, and he did not deserve that. He was just caring about her. And of course she has her own problems, but I don't think that's an excuse to treat people horribly. The next book I read was Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. I wanted to read Between Shades of Grey after reading Ruta Sepetys' other novel. She currently has 2 books out and both books are related to each other. They follow different cousins. Twin Shades of Grey follows our main character Lena. It's set in 1941 in Lithuania. One night Soviet officers barge into Lena's home and she gets deported, along with her mom and her little brother. They get put into a work camp together and that's where they live for the next months until they have to migrate yet again. This whole story is heartbreaking, honestly. It's very graphic, it's very horrifying. I have to put a warning on that. It is very realistic, I feel like. I obviously don't know because I haven't lived in 1941, I haven't lived through the Second World War. It was definitely more horrifying than I expected it to be. Ruta Sepetys does not shy away from dark. And I really like that. I really like how she showed everything and so many characters in this book died. And again, I really admire Ruta Sepetys for it because she did not shy away from anything really. In a lot of books you notice that authors are hesitant to kill off major side characters or main characters. Ruta Sepetys does not suffer from that problem, and if it bothers her, she does not show it. She is ruthless in that department. She really tugs on your heartstrings in this book with the deaths that take place, because you start to care about these characters and you really get to know a lot of them. So sad when one of them dies, inevitably really, because the conditions wherein they work in this work camp are horrible. It's amazing that so many of the characters even survived. The ending of this book broke my heart, honestly. I kind of saw it coming, but still it really made me sad because I was still hoping that everyone would get out alive and it just didn't happen. What I do not like is how Ruta Sepetys finished this book. I had the same problem with the other book. She finishes it with a letter and it's very abrupt. Like the story just ends and it's done like that. You don't get to see the other major side characters anymore. It's just our one main character and that's really it. You don't get to hear about any of the other characters anymore. And I was really asking myself, like, what happened to them? I would have loved to see like an epilogue or something totaling these character stories, because you do start to care about them, you see them throughout the novel and then they just suddenly disappear like that. It feels a little abrupt and I do not like that. I totally had the same feeling with her other book and it just kind of makes me sad because it feels like the novel isn't really finished. This book also got a 3 out of 5 stars from me. Then I gave myself a challenge, and that challenge was to read the entire Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I tried reading Six of Crows with my boyfriend a while ago and I just couldn't get into it, so we dropped it and I was like, fine, I'll read the Shadow and Bone trilogy and maybe I will care more about Six of Crows if I read the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I binge read the entire Shadow and Bone trilogy in December and I do not regret it. I actually really enjoyed the series and I did not expect that. Everyone probably knows what Shadow and Bone is about by now, but if you don't, it's about a main character called Alina. And Alina gets discovered as being a Grisha. And Grisha are people who have magical powers basically, but Alina is a special snowflake and she is being called the Sun Summoner. She is the only Sun Summoner that is in existence and that makes her very important to powerful people. There is a love triangle in this book, more like a love square really. I didn't really mind because I love all of the male characters so much. I don't have that a lot, but I really like Mel and Nikolai, especially Nikolai, and I can't wait to read Six of Crows and then read the new duology that's coming out for Nikolai. Like, I love Nikolai and I felt like he got kind of an open ending and I was so sad about that, but I discovered that he was getting his own duology and now it's all okay. It's going to be called King of Scars and has a beautiful cover. I believe the first book is coming out very soon. So I have to get on Six of Crows ASAP. I also did a reading vlog for Shadow and Bone, by the way, where I detail my entire thoughts on this trilogy. So if you are interested in my in-depth thoughts, then I will leave a link to that vlog down below. Then I read this manga, Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, with my boyfriend. This was the last book I read in December, and honestly it was such a disappointment. It was such a disappointing last read of the year. As I reached my reading goal, I really expected to like this though, don't get me wrong. I didn't just read this for the sake of reading it. I had this on my shelf because I thought I would like it. I went to a book market with my boyfriend and we saw these really cheap manga Shakespeare's there. They're in English and we were like, well, sure, let's go with it. And honestly, this is such a lazy adaptation. Like, the manga art style is pretty good. I really enjoyed that. But the lines from the play have been taken directly. Like, they aren't translated or anything. Like, the author did nothing to it. It's just the lines from the play. It's set in modern Tokyo with Romeo and Juliet and all of these characters. They talk in Old English. It's so weird and unnatural. It really threw me out of the story and it made me enjoy this so much less. I'll see if I can find an example for you here. I think I can just look at the beginning of the book. Like, it starts off really good. It introduces all of these characters in color. It's so much fun. It has these quotes from the play. And then it obviously gets black and white because it's manga. I expected that. That didn't disappoint me. Then it started to disappoint me. Just because it was so lazy. Like, if for example, this part here, it says, "What art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death." We're in modern Tokyo, please put a little more effort into your manga. So, disappointing read aside, I had a fun reading month nonetheless. I really liked reading Shadow and Bone, and I cannot wait to continue on with Six of Crows, although that is still happening in January. I think I need a little bit of a break. But soon enough, I will be continuing on with the series. I'm hoping for an amazing reading year. I didn't have any 5-star reads in 2018 actually. I only had like 4.5-star reads. It never ended up being a full 5-star, which is kind of sad, but also understandable. With my rating system, it's very hard to get a 5-star, which I think is critical enough, and I really like my rating system. So I think I'll continue on doing that in 2019. But nonetheless, I had a great reading year. I discovered some new favourites like Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and I've also had some disappointing reads. Be a favourite books and a disappointing books video coming still, and I hope you will enjoy those as well. Let me know down below what you finished in December. Did you have a good reading year in 2018? I would love to know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!